Hi, everyone. I'm going to be doing a video regarding the Russia and Ukraine situation. I'm going to try and keep it short and concise, but there are two primary points that I wanted to make, and it's regarding disinformation and basically deception that we in the world are being given from what we would consider reliable news sources. And I'm just doing this video to help open people's eyes. I'm hoping that it will prepare at least one or two people that might not have had the opportunity because they were blind and didn't see what was coming. So hence I've used the scripture over here from Hosea where it talks about God's people being destroyed for lack of knowledge. Just like World War II, we are heading into another world war, and it's going to be devastating. But it's actually being played out long before, right in front of our eyes. So for those that don't know where the Ukraine and Crimea Peninsula is, I've just put a little graphic here. It's basically at the southern end of Ukraine and Russia over here. And I went and tried to find some typical news sources on what the world is told about Ukraine and Russia and the situation. And I found this article from CNN basically saying everything you need to know about how it got here. And this was published in 2017. It was after the initial annexation of the Crimea by Russia. And it says something to this degree at the bottom here. It began as a dispute over a trade agreement, but it mushroomed into the bloodiest conflict in Europe since the wars over the former Yugoslavia. That is so vague and basically not even close to why this war happened in the first place, the initial conflict, and why the Crimean Peninsula was annexed in the first place. So if you read on further in that article, it talks about, and this is what most people will be told, Russia completed its annexation of Crimea in a referendum that is slammed by Ukraine and most of the world as illegitimate. Now, that referendum, if you go and do some research on it, and actually before I even go there, these are just a couple of articles, and the type of thing you see all over about how what Russia did was illegal. Illegal to who and by who? Who said it's illegal? Again, this is simply what we're told. But if you go and you actually research it, you'll see this is a article about the referendum itself. And that little map on the top right there, that is the different regions of Crimea. And more than 95% of the citizens in each of those regions voted to be returned back to Russia. So they wanted to be returned. Now I'm using the word return to Russia because that's a whole nother reason why they even had the referendum in the first place. But for them to state that this is illegal and it was in some or other way compromised referendum, I think is really ludicrous. If you can just think for a moment that they could possibly get more than 90% of a population to want to vote in favor of moving, there's got to be another message that you're not being told. And this is what happened. I did some digging, and around 1954, it says that the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union issued a decree transferring the Crimean Oblast from the Russian Soviet Federation, Federative Social Republic, to the Ukraine. Okay, basically, the Soviet Union transferred the Crimean Peninsula to Ukraine. And I saw that, and I was like, well, if they did that, that should have been fair, and we can't really argue it. Until you actually read further and you find out that this Presidium of the Soviet, or the Supreme Soviet, is effectively a body that was given authority to make decisions for the Soviet Republic. And when they did this and made this decision, it says over here that according to a 2009 article, the Presidium of the Supreme Council gathered for a session on 19 February 1954, where only 13 of the 27 members were present. Therefore, there was no quorum, but somehow it was still unanimously adopted. That's kind of like having half of the Senate in a gathering and deciding to give away a state. And obviously that is something that is very suspicious and suspect. But that's what happened. And for those that follow the deeper meanings of things that happen in the world, that number 13 is also quite interesting. I don't know any more of the details other than this looks highly suspicious, that a handful of people were able to make a decision that impacted so many. And to this day, this is why the people that were in the Crimean Peninsula wanted to be returned to Russia. I don't think they ever wanted to leave, and it was never something that was in their interests. And it was done, I believe, as a underhanded agreement between individuals that had vested interests. Anyway, like Joe Biden would say. So that was the first thing that I wanted to point out, was how we got into the situation, and the fact that you're not being told the real reason of why the Ukrainian situation has reached the point it has, and the clearly deceptive disinformation you're being given as simply a case of, well, it was an illegal annexure and Russia is the bad guy. When you really look deeper into the situation, it's far more complicated, and there's a lot more factors as to why it happened the way it did. Yes, before I carry on, I actually wanted to state that I do not support Russia or Ukraine in any of what is transpiring. I support truth, and the truth being told. And that's my only motivation for giving this video. So if it comes off that I'm a pro-Russian supporter, that's not the intention of this video. I'm simply stating that we in the world are being given a certain amount of information in a certain way that is clearly trying to manipulate our perception of what is actually going on and why it's happening. And this, for me, is what's more important, is that you can see and critically think for yourself and make decisions on your own, not having yourself basically fist-fed what the mainstream media wants you to know and believes that you should only know, because again, it's wrong, and it's not giving you a clear picture of what is actually going on and what is being lined up for us. So I went and found this article where it talks about something that happened earlier in the year. Again, you're not being told this, but it was around the 19th of March. It says over here that the Ukrainian foreign minister, I can't even pronounce that, Dmytro Kuleba, announced this week that the country's National Security and Defense Council had approved a strategy that is aimed at retaking Crimea and reintegrating the strategically important peninsula. Well, if you were Russia and the defense minister of the Ukraine said something like this, I'm pretty sure you would be pretty concerned for the people in your region that you recently brought back into your country. And further, if you read on, it basically says that the move of the Ukrainian government follows a series of anti-Russian political crackdowns and military buildups that have exacerbated the threat of a full-scale war. So again, there were movements by the Ukrainian government first, and this is backed up by other articles and other reports that I found. This was on Alternus website, where there were people tweeting about events happening in Ukraine. And this one in particular at the bottom left here, it says, the situation at the contact line has taken a turn for the worst. Dennis Pushilin, the DPR head, said that the amount of Ukrainian equipment and personnel arriving at the contact line indicates that Ukraine is ready to resume full-scale hostilities in Donbass. Now, Donbass is the region north of Crimea. It's involved in a similar process of wanting to be separated from Ukraine, but ultimately it's all part of the same conflict. But if you understand that a lot of the initial provocation and movements started with Ukraine making these statements and then acting on it, having their own troops move into positions, starting to prepare to take back, like their defense secretary says, the Crimea. Do you not think that it would make perfect sense that Russia would want to counter any of that? The problem that I have is when you read the news, and I did a simple search on the internet to try and see when this tank movements of Ukraine happened, and you just get this non-stop barrage of Russia is building up troops, Russia is moving troops, Russia is the aggressor. But you're not being told what Ukraine did and what Ukraine said. And this is, again, where I have a problem. I feel as though there is a very one-sided message being told to people, and it's not the truth. It's a lie. I was aware that after Ukraine lost Crimea to Russia, one of the things that they did is that they actually cut off their main fresh water supply. And that really was a vindictive move on their side. But it, for some other reason, reminded me of the story of King Solomon and the two women with the, if you're not familiar with it, there was basically a woman that killed her baby accidentally, and then she stole another woman's baby. And there was a dispute, and they brought this in front of King Solomon. And in order to resolve the dispute, Solomon said basically that they should just cut the baby in half and give each woman, one half. And in that moment, the lady whose baby it wasn't was okay with it. She left said, okay, you can do that. But the one that whose baby it actually was, she pleaded with the king and said, no, please just give the baby to the other lady. And in that moment, with King Solomon's wisdom, he knew that that was the rightful mother. For me, in the case of Ukraine, it's kind of like, if they honestly cared for the people of Crimea and wanted to, take care of them, water is a life-giving, life-saving commodity, and they effectively couldn't care less what happens to the people of Crimea. And like I said, out of a vindictive move, they cut off their water. So what I'm saying is I don't think it's their baby. Where we're at the moment, I'm waiting for the Neville Chamberlain moment. This is what Neville went, and if you're not familiar with him, he was the British Prime Minister, the United Kingdom Prime Minister, and he went to Germany to try and broker a peace deal. And this is what it looked like.
When I was a little boy, I used to repeat, if at first you don't succeed, try again. That's what I'm doing. When I come back, I hope I may be able to say, as Hotspur says in Henry IV, out of this nettled danger, we pluck this flower safety.
our Prime Minister has come back from his third and greatest journey, and he said
that the settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace. This morning, I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine. Some of you perhaps have already heard what it contains, but I would just like to read it to you. We, the German Führer and Chancellor, and the British Prime Minister have had a further meeting today and are agreed in recognizing that the question of Anglo-German relations is of the first importance for the two countries and for Europe. We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again. We are resolved that the method of consultation shall be the method adopted to deal with any other questions that may concern our two countries, and we are determined to continue our efforts to remove possible sources of difference and thus to contribute to assure the peace of Europe.
there was no sign of British reserve as the crowds fought to get near the Premier's car.
And as you can imagine, it didn't turn out well for the world. I honestly believe we are headed the same way. I'm simply waiting for someone to go over to Russia and sign a deal saying that everything is going to be fine. And I'm pretty certain history will repeat itself and we are going to find ourselves in a war that no one ever imagined could ever happen. And again, this is why I believe the Lord has put these scriptures in the Bible where it talks about, for when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are the children of light, and the children of day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. So anyway, I hope this has enlightened someone out there, and just pray for your loved ones and the family that are not born again, not on the right path with the Lord, and just pray that the world knows and wakes up to what's happening and what is coming.